Team and welcome back to the channel. So before we get started, I would recommend you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You will find tons of amazing hands-on videos on DevOps and cloud DevOps. And as you know, we try to focus on making real-time scenario-based projects on my channel. So make sure to check it out and make sure to subscribe. Talking about today's video, so today we are going to get started with day 2 of AWS DevOps Bootcamp, and in today's video we are going to learn about IAM, which is going to be used for access management inside the AWS. Okay. Also, team, batch 7 of DevSecOps and Cloud DevOps has already started. If you are interested to learn from scratch to advanced level, make sure to check it out. And just to let you know, there are more than 10 projects which are going to be hands-on, and there will be 5 corporate projects to help you understand what kind of projects exist in companies, which is going to be very useful if you are going for interviews. So make sure to check out the description of the video. Now, with that being said, let's get started. So team, in order to get started with AWS, first of all, what you have to do is simply go on Google and search for sign up for AWS account. Okay, and the page opens. You can see the first option. You can simply click on AWS, and here you will see this page come up. So click on complete sign up. So click on that as well. Once you click on that, this option appears, and you can click on the last option, which says create a new AWS account. So click on that. Once you click on, it's going to ask you to provide details about your email address, AWS account name, those things. The basic things only you have to provide. And once you have provided, you'll be able to create your AWS account. Okay. Once you have done that, you need to click on sign in, and you have to sign in with your account. Initially, I would suggest go on and sign in with your root user email. Okay. You have to provide username and password, and after that you'll be needing, at this point, best option to secure your account is to use MFA code. As you can see, I use it, and let me put the details 453 and 966. Once you give that, you'll be able to be logged in into your page. Okay, and yeah, from here we can get started. So this is going to be the dashboard from where you'll be able to see the recently visited services and other details as well. Okay. Now, let me explain you about the IAM Identity Access Management, and let me explain you how we can utilize it on real time. So team, now let us understand about IAM in AWS, what exactly it is and why do we need it. So first of all, we need to understand that IAM, it is short for Identity Access Management. It's basically a way to manage user identities and access. Okay, there are two ways to do that, that is provided by AWS. One is the traditional way, traditional IAM, and second is the IAM Identity Center. Okay, we are going to go in deep also in between, like what exactly is the difference between them, but that will be later on. For now, let us understand in short what exactly is the difference between them. First of all, traditional, it is very simplified version for access management. Okay, while this is one is kind of complex. Traditional IAM, its scope is basically limited to single AWS account, while for IAM Identity Center, its scope is not limited to single, but it could be utilized with multiple AWS accounts, okay, as well as applications. Okay, but yeah, again, I'm saying that we are going to go in deep. Okay, so IAM is what? It's basically a way or service provided by AWS to manage different resources, to create users, manage that specific user permissions, and all those things. Okay. So in IAM, let's talk about the traditional IAM first. So in IAM, we have different components. First one, we have IAM Users. Then we have IAM Roles. Then we have Policies, right? And we are also having IAM Groups. Okay. So let us understand in detail what exactly they are, what is their functionality, and why do we need them. Okay. So let us start with the users. Let us start with the IAM users. What exactly it is? So basically, it's an identity. IAM users is an identity in AWS that is going to use to represent a single person or application who needs to interact with AWS resources. For example, let us say that this is our AWS account. Okay. And inside this AWS account, we are going to have many resources, like we could have EC2, we could have an EKS cluster, right? And let's say there we have let's say this is one user, okay, and we have some application. So if this user needs to interact with these resources, how it's going to do? It cannot directly go there and access it. So for that, what we have, a service we have, which is known as IAM. And inside this service, we are going to create a user. Okay. That user we can create, let's say we are calling it X. Okay. Now on X, we can provide different level of permissions like X will be able to access EKS, X will be able to access EC2. So now this X is going to be used to represent this user or the application. So now if user needs to interact with these AWS services like EC2 or EKS, so it's going to use an IAM user. What is the main task of IAM user? It's basically an identity that is used to represent a single person or application. So this X is representing this single person. Okay. And this X will be utilized for interacting with these kind of services. Okay. Now, talking about the key features of a user. So there are first we have the credentials. Now, for a user in IAM, credentials are of two kinds. One is going to be access keys. One is going to be password based. Okay. So why do we need two kind of credential, and what exactly they are? What exactly is the difference between them? So basically, let's say you want to use this user because if we created this user X, so we gave certain level of permissions like X will be able to interact with EKS, X will be able to interact with EC2. Okay, but that is like we are using we can log in using this user and then we can access, right? But in case you want to access EC2 and EKS over some kind of terminal, right? Terminals like inside AWS we have AWS CLI, which is a kind of command line interface which is going to help you interact with AWS services through terminal. Okay, so if you are going to access your services using this kind of terminal or this kind of command line interface, then you have to authenticate this with your AWS account using access keys. Inside access keys, what we have, a key ID, access key, access key we have. Okay, access key ID, and then we have the secret for that. This is basically kind of tokens. Okay, this is going to be the access key ID, and this is going to be token. So using these two things, you'll be able to authenticate a terminal based CLI. Okay, like AWS CLI. Why do we need then user and password? So when you want to log into your AWS account from UI and then you want to interact with those services, in that case you could utilize the username and password. So for any IAM user, you can create these two kind of credentials. Okay, talking about next key feature of users, we have permissions. Okay, now by default, when you create a user, by default it does not have any kind of permissions, and we have to attach policies to give it some kind of permissions, which we are going to see in a bit. Okay, let's talk about the next key feature, which is the use case. What is the use case for this? So basically, let's say IAM users can be created and it can be assigned to individuals. Let's say we have some user Aditya. Okay, and this Aditya user needs to interact with AWS services. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a user named Aditya inside AWS IAM, create its user password, and share the credentials to this user. Now this user can interact with AWS services using this IAM user. Okay, so these are users. Talking about the next component which we have, another component which is quite important is the user groups in IAM. Okay, so what exactly are user groups? So basically it's this IAM user group is a collection of IAM users. If you have, let's say we have multiple IAM users, let's say A, B, C, D. So we can create one group, let's say group 1. So now this group 1 is basically collection of IAM users. And why do we need to create groups? Okay, so let us say that I want to give permissions to A, B, C, and D, the permission to manage and work with EC2 machines. Okay, so if I'm doing this individually, I need to assign permission here, permission here, permission here, permission here. Instead of that, what I can do, I can assign the permission to a group and to, let's say we have some new user E, and we want to give permission of management of EC2 to user E. In that case, what we have to do, we can simply add this user to this group, because to this group G1 we have given the permission to manage EC2 machine. So that's why we need to have the IAM user groups. Okay, talking about the key features. So first of all, it's quite useful for when you want to give permissions to multiple users. Okay, in that case, a group is the best way to perform that. And another best part is that one user, let's say A or B, they can belong to multiple groups. For example, they are belonging to G1 by default, so that they can manage EC2 machines. Let's say we created another group which is GEKS, where this is another group where we have given permission to manage EKS, and if I added a user B to here, then user B will have total permission to manage EC2 and EKS. That means one user can be added to multiple groups, and that is quite useful. So generally in companies, what we do, we create groups like, we can create groups like developers, then admins, then DevOps, and we can add different users to these groups with specific kind of permissions. Okay, talking about next important component, which we have, the IAM roles. Now what is IAM roles? So basically IAM role is an identity with permission that can be assumed by entities. Okay, so basically let's say I have let's say inside EC2 I have created an Ubuntu machine. Okay, and I have a requirement that this Ubuntu machine should be having permission to perform some kind of thing. For example, let's say it should be having permission to work with EKS. Okay, or it should be having permission to create resources inside AWS. Okay, so how does this virtual machine will have permission of this? Okay, so for that we can create IAM roles. They are what? They are also identities. Okay, now these identities are basically created with permissions. Okay, so roles are what? Roles are identities with permissions, and then if you want to give some like let's say EC2 machine, virtual machine, or any kind of application, if I want that those services and those application should be having permission to perform specific kind of actions. For example, as I mentioned, I want that this virtual machine should be having permission to work with EKS easily, to create AWS other services. So what I can do, let's say I created one I role, let's call it as XYZ. Okay, and by default when we create a role, what is that? A role is basically an identity with permission. So this identity will have permission to manage EKS. Okay, so this will be assumed by this virtual machine, and then this virtual machine will be having permissions to perform specific kind of action. Again repeating, what is IAM roles? IAM roles are basically identities with permission. Okay, that can be assumed by different entities like AWS services. Okay, they can be assumed like AWS services. What kind of services? We can take an example of AWS Lambda, or they could also be assumed by applications that are running on AWS. And another important thing, which is the most important part, these IAM roles can be assumed by users or services from other AWS account. Okay, so these are what? IAM roles. Talking about key features of IAM roles. Now, in key features of IAM roles, first of all, no credentials. Even though they are identities, but they do not require, or they do not have permanent credentials. They are going to use temporary security credentials only. Okay, which is going to be that temporary security credentials can be created via, or can be used via AWS STS. What is STS? It is security token service. Okay, so no role can have a permanent credential. It is just having a temporary security credentials like STS. Okay, then next key feature we have is like user or service which want to utilize the that role, they need to assume it. they need to assume that role, then only they are going to get the permissions. Okay. For example, let's take a real world example. Let's say I have an EC2 instance. Okay. So what I want to grant an EC2 instance permission to read from S3 bucket while storing access keys in the application code. Okay, that is the real world example. You want that your EC2 machine, like let's say Ubuntu machine, should be having permission to read from an S3 bucket inside AWS without storing access keys in the application code. So that can be done using roles. Okay. Fourth component, and one of the most important component we have inside AWS IAM, is known as IAM policies. Okay. What is IAM policy? It's basically a JSON document that is going to define the permission of an entity. What kind of entity we are having? We are having entity like users, group, and as I mentioned, we have roles. Okay, because these are the entities where we can provide permissions, or like defined kind of permissions. How permissions are going to be created? So basically, permissions is going to be created using policies. Okay. For example, we can have policies like this user. For example, let's say I give the permission to this user to create EC2 machines, manage them. When I say manage, that means like change it, stop it, delete it, all those things. Okay. So if a user group or role needs to have permissions, they need to have policies assigned to them. Okay. So talking about like key features of these IAM policies. Okay. So first of all, we have managed policies. What are managed policies? So from AWS side, there will be some predefined policies that are provided by AWS, like administrator access, Amazon S3 read-only access. So the different kind of permissions will be already available or predefined. Okay, these are kind of default ones. Okay, then we have inline policies. Okay, what are inline policies? They are custom policies that can be directly attached to a single entity. Then we have custom policies. Now custom policies, like obviously, see, if we have a one default permissions available like EC2 full access. In that case, see, let's say I have one like user, IAM user I have created, and I don't want that user should be having complete EC2 access. I want that user should be having just permission to start or stop an instance, but no permission to create or delete that instance. Okay, so in that case, we have to create custom policies that can be done using JSON document. Okay, which we are going to see in a bit. Now, so let me show you one example. One second, I have one example stored somewhere. Yeah, so let me explain you this example. Okay, now in this example, first of all, what we can see, let us understand the structure of it. Okay, so first we have some version and statement, but these are the most important thing. Okay, first we have effect. So in effect, you can have either allow or deny. That means if you want to give the permission or if you want to deny it. Okay, then we have action. Okay, now here you can define exact actions. For example, here we are talking about EC2 actions. So what action we are giving? First we are giving run instances, which is going to help us to create instances. Then we have stop instances, start instances, and describe instances to get the information. Okay, so here basically we are talking about EC2 instances, and in actions we can define what kind of permission you want. In what kind of permission, it can have different scope, like run, start it, stop it, create it, delete it, those things we can have. Okay, then we have a section of resource. Inside resource, basically we define the AWS resource the policy is going to apply to. Example, S3 bucket, or we can have like EC2 instances. Okay, so here as of now we are written star. Star means all of them, all. And here since we are talking about EC2 instances, that means all the EC2 instances on the AWS account. Okay, so this is how general structure will be there. And one another option is there, that is optional condition. Basically we have conditions. Okay, because let's say I can set condition like, for example, time of day, that this policy will be applicable on this specific time of day. Okay, that also we can have. So team, now we are going to perform some POC kind of thing, or basically to do some hands-on to see the usage. So first we are going to create users, then groups, then policies, so that we can understand the difference in the permissions. If I'm giving a different kind of permission to different user, like how the access is being managed there. Okay, next up what we are going to do, we are going to create role and assign it to EC2 instance. For example, I'm going to create a role for S3 access, S3 bucket access, and once this role is assigned to EC2 instance, that means this instance will be assuming the role of whatever role we create. Okay, that means this EC2 machine should have the permission to access S3 buckets. Okay, so that will be able to say. So these two tasks will be helping us to understand in real time how IAM is being utilized. Okay, now first of all, make sure to go on the console management page, and once you have logged in, you have to go here and search for IAM and click on the first link only. Do not click on Identity Center, that we are going to cover later on. So click on IAM, and as soon as you click, what thing you are going to see here, it becomes global. That means whatever users we create or whatever things we do inside IAM, that is global level. That means it's not specific for region. Instead, it is global. While if I just go back to the home page, you'll be seeing that it is changed back to Mumbai, which is the nearest location. Okay, from this we can clearly confirm that this IAM access management, basically it is global level. Okay, it has global scope. Again, you can see in recently visited we have the IAM, so we can click on that. Now first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create a group. Okay, and here we can click on create group, and the name of the group will be limited EC2 access group. Limited EC2 access group. Okay, and scroll down, and as of now we are not attaching any of the policies. These are AWS managed policies that are available, so we are not going to attach any of them. Simply click on create user group. As soon as you have created, next thing what we have to do, we have to create a custom policy inside which we are going to set up limited permissions. So how we can do that? So for that we have to click on policies, then we have to click on create policy, and here we have these two options, JSON and visual, correct? So click on JSON, and here we have to write a custom policy in JSON format. So I'm going to utilize, I have this one policy, yes, this one. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, here first of all we are setting up for EC2, and the action permission that we are giving is just to describe. That means we are giving just read permissions, nothing else. And even we are denying the permission for starting, stopping, or terminating instances. Okay, so click on next. This is the permission that we have selected, and now we have to give a name to this policy, and I'm going to give the name as limited EC2 permissions policy. Okay, limited EC2 permissions policy. Okay, and scroll down, and you can see automatically it was able to detect that this policy we are creating, it is for service EC2. Click on create policy. Okay, so now we have created the policy, now we have created the group. So what we have to do now, we have to attach that policy to this group. Okay, for that we can click on permissions, and here you can see there are option to permission policies. So we can click on add permissions, click on attach policies, and here we can search for the one that we just created, limited EC2 permissions policy. So click on that and attach it. Now whatever user I add to this group, limited EC2 access group, that user will be having permission to read only EC2 machines. Okay, so now that part is done, and next thing we have to do is create users. So click on users, Click on create users. First user we are going to create, which is admin user. I want to give the permission to access the AWS management console as well. I want to create the IAM user and custom password. So password we are going to set admin @123. We can check this and uncheck this option so that no prompt is coming to reset the password. Okay, click on next. Now here when we talk about like first user that we have created, so what access we should be giving it. Okay, so here by default this group is visible, but we are not going to add it to this group. We are click on attach policies directly, and here the second option that you see, administrator access. So I'm going to give this. If I expand this, you'll be able to see that we are giving complete permission to all the resources and all kind of actions. Okay, so now click on next. This is for admin user. Click on create user, and these are some details, so you can download this. Okay, now if I go back to downloads, first let me remove the. Okay, so we have done, and first user we created which has complete permission. Second user that we are going to give will be limited user. And again we are going to give permission to create to access the AWS management console, because as of now we are going to perform everything from the UI only. Okay, and we are going to set up a password as well, limited @123. Let me check and make sure to uncheck this option. Click on next. Now what we have to do, we have to attach this user to this group. Create user. Now since that user is added to that group, which group? Limited EC2 access. That means here we have given read only permission, so same permissions will be given to limited users as well. Okay, so this part is done, and we have already set up the passwords for both of them. Next up, what we have to do, we have to create a role for EC2. Okay, because we want to attach that role to EC2, so we can click on roles, and here we have to click on create role. Okay, in AWS, make sure it's AWS, and here we have to choose EC2. Okay, that is done. Click on next. Now what we have to do, we have to attach a policy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to search for S3. Okay, so what we can do, we can give the permission for Amazon S3 read only access. Okay, so that EC2 machine has the permission to read or just view the Amazon S3 read only access. Okay, once that is done, we can click on next. Role name we can give, so let's say EC2 S3 access read. Okay, click on create role. Now this role is created, right? Now what we can do, we can create EC2 machine so that we can perform the demo. So team, now in order to perform the demo, we are going to create two virtual machines. So for that, you can open the console. Here you can type EC2, and here you can click on the first option. Now first thing that you have to do, make sure to open the security group, and here we have to make sure that we are having one. Let's say we are having one, and in network security group setup we have, which has different definition of ports. So I use generally this primary SG, and here these are the ports that are open in my inbound rules. Okay, these things will be explained in networking, but here just basics I'm saying. So make sure that you have port 2022 to open so that you can be able to connect to your machine. Okay, now let us create the instance. I'm going to create two instances for the demo. Name we can give as server 12 machine, and here instance type we are going to create small one, which is going to be T2 small. Keep here, select the one that you have. If you are not having, click on create new keep here, provide a name, it should be RSA, format will be PEM, and click on download. So it will be downloaded on your system, then you can be able to select it. Security group, as I said, I'm going to use primary, and storage I'm giving 15 to each one of them. Click on launch. So machines are created and we can name them as well, server 1, and this will be server. Okay, and let's refresh the page. Okay, now these two machines are created, correct? Now we have to, first of all, we have to test that if are we able to like manage the machines using the two different users that we created, correct? So once we have created the machines, next step is to test the permissions. Okay, one second, let me filter it out to only running. Okay, now we have already created two users, so I'm going to open this incognito. Okay, here AWS, and we can log in. So first let us try to log in with the limited user. You can see the option comes IAM user sign in. Okay, I'm not logging in with root user. So here we have to first provide account ID, which you'll be able to get from here. You can just copy this, paste it here, and user. So username is limited user, right? We can confirm this by going to downloads. Username is correct, password we can copy and we can paste here. Click on sign in. Okay, and here you'll be able to see that you can see lots of permissions are not given. Only the permission is given to view the instances. Okay, so let's say I'll open server 1. We are able to see the details. Okay, but let's say that I want to delete this machine. So I can, if I go here to click on terminate, let's see what happens. It says not able to terminate because these permissions are not given, correct? So I can close this. That means the limited user permission, limited user that we have created, it has permission to view things, to read only access we have given. IPv4 address, private IPv4 address. Okay, these permissions are given. Now let's say I'll log out and I will log in with user, the admin user that we created, right? So click on this. Account ID is going to be the same, and here username is admin user, correct? Password was admin@123. We can log in now. Once we logged in, we can go to EC2 machines, instances running, and open this. So we are able to see this like details, but if I want to stop the machine, I can click on terminate and let's see what happens. And we are able to terminate the machine, okay, because of permission differences. Okay, so limited user, we did not give enough permission to perform different kind of things, but to admin user we have given all sorts of permissions. Okay, this is one task, right? We understood how we can create groups, users, and policies, and how we can utilize it, right? We understood how we can assign policies directly. If I show you again, if I go to users, we have admin users, and we understood how we can assign policies directly. You can see administrator access we gave. Okay, so if you click on add permissions, you have the option to attach policies directly by searching here. But if you want to create your own policies, you can click on create inline policy, click on JSON, and you can write the code. Okay, next step is that what we want to create a role, and that role we are going to assign to that EC2 machine. Okay, so let us see if we have already created. Okay, so we did create EC2 S3 access read, right? So that is fine. We can go back to EC2 machine, click on instances. Now we have this instance, right? So now what we have to do, we have to click on actions, security, modify IAM role. And now what we are going to do, we are going to assign one role to this EC2 instance. You can see this option is available. Click on that and update. Now what we just did, so let me close this. So what we just did, we assigned the role to machine EC2 instance. Okay, so basically now EC2 instance will have permission to assume that role, correct? Now what we have to do, now we have to test that are we able to access a AWS service of S3, okay, from EC2 machine or not, because permission is already given through role. Okay, so for this demo what we can do, we have to create one S3 bucket. Click on this, click on buckets, and let's say one bucket we are already created. Let's click on this. Okay, maybe we can just go with fresh one, so I can click on create bucket. Let's provide it with IAM test bucket, test S3. Okay, and no changes we are going to do now. Click on create bucket. Okay, S3 name we have to change because it is already existing, I guess. So we are going to provide the name DevOps Shack 123. Okay, and click on create, and let's see. So bucket we have just created, right? Okay, so as of now there is no object, so I can click on upload, and we are going to click on add files, and let's say I want to add one document, so I'll add this. Click on open, and we just uploaded this. Okay, so now we are having one file inside the S3 bucket. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's say we have an option to download, right? No, not this. So this I have copied, and I'm going to paste it here. Second. Okay, fine. So we have one bucket created, right? Now we can go back to EC2 machine, go back to instances, click on this. We have this option connect. Okay, so what we can do, we can connect to our EC2 instance directly from the UI itself. Okay, and what we have to do, instance connect should be the option, this option. Click on connect, and now it's going to open the terminal using which we'll be able to connect to our EC2 instance. Okay, now what we have to check, we have to check if we are able to access the S3 bucket that we have just created. Are we able to access it or not? So team, now let us understand about roles, how we can perform a demo to confirm that we are able to attach roles. Okay, so basically you can consider two scenarios where let's say we have created EC2 machines. In first scenario, let's say we are not at all using roles. In that case, what we have to do, let's say my requirement is that I want to view list of S3 buckets. In that case, what we have to do, first we have to install AWS CLI, then we have to run command AWS configure, and we have to add credentials of specific user which has permission of viewing the S3 buckets. Okay, and basically here when we talk about adding credential, that means we have to view the, it's a security concern because you are adding the credential directly inside the EC2 machine. Okay, and after that we can run the command AWS S3 ls, which is going to show the list of buckets. While when we talk about using roles, so what we do, we set up one roles inside AWS and give permission to the role for read access on X3, and we assign this role to EC2, and then we have to install AWS CLI. Now difference is that we don't have to add credentials inside the EC2 machine, which is much better option, right? Because it's a security concern, and here we won't be having security concern because we are not adding the credentials. And now we can directly run the command AWS S3 ls, which should show us the S3 list. Okay, so now we are already created the machine and we are connected to it. Now what we have to do, we have to install AWS CLI, right? So for that you can go to official documentation page and you'll be able to find the command to install command to install AWS CLI. Okay, now this is the command. So first let us copy this. Second, I'll copy this and I can run it here. Okay, before that, make sure to run the command sudo apt update Okay, so this is done. Now we can run our first command to install the package, which is this one, and let me remove the $sign. Okay, now yeah, this is done. Next step is to unzip the package. Okay, now it is possible that unzip might not be installed on your machine, but let's see. So we can see unzip is not present, but we can install it by using this command. Copy and paste it here. And let's see. And now we can run the unzip command. Once unzip command is running, we can run this command, which is going to install AWS CLI. Okay. And let me see if we have anything. Okay, fine. So this is done, and now it's unzipping or unpacking, you can say. So let's wait for this to complete. Then we are going to run the installation command for AWS CLI. Okay, so this is done, and we can run this command to install it. Okay, so let me see AWS version. Okay, so now we have AWS CLI installed, right? Yes, so now we can run the command to view the S3 buckets. Okay, before that, what you have to do, you have to make sure that in the server 2, click on actions, security, modify IAM role, and make sure that the one role that you have attached, the one that we created, right, EC2 S3 access read, right? This confirms that we have added the permission to EC2 machine. We have added the rule which has the permission to read the S3 buckets. And now here I can run S3. If I let me increase the size. Okay, here if I run S3 ls, and you can see it shows the two S3 buckets that we have, DevOps Stack 123 and Dev State 123. That means key roles, this is how roles will work. The machine or service to which you are assigning the role, that machine is going to assume that role, and now you can utilize the role permissions. Okay, why it's better than like creating separate user giving permission? Because here you can clearly understand that we are not giving the credentials inside the service. Okay, which is the much better option.